Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and do consider supporting the channel via PayPal or Patreon. You'll find the links in the video description. It's the last round of the FTX Crypto Cup. Praggnanandhaa against Carlson. Praggnanandhaa needed to win this 4-game match to overtake Carlson, but he lost in game 3. But if he won this game 4, he could level the match and take it to a tiebreak. And, well, let's see what happened. There was Firuz Jah who was chasing him. So Pragg, fully motivated. Well, of course, you're motivated anyway when you're playing the world champion. But anyway, game 4, Pragg had to win this one to tie the match. Carlson with black. Bishop b4 check. Now, I used to really enjoy playing this with black, actually. It's a very straightforward move. After this exchange, well, you can play it in 2 ways. You can play a kind of Queen's Gambit declined with d5. Or you can get a bit more adventurous and play f5. I used to pick my opponents, which one I played. And this one turns out extremely well for Carlson. I think white should just play g3 in this position. This is the kind of standard way that you play against Dutch formations. e3, yeah, not so great actually. It doesn't sufficiently challenge black's setup. You can see Pragg has got, Carlson has got in e5 already. And this is very comfortable for black. And Carlson goes for kind of the full central clamp with c5, which I really like. Just from a positional point of view, it makes sense to blockade this c-pawn. Makes that bishop not such a great piece. And now after d5, e4. And then you've got a fantastic square for a knight on e5. Well, Pragg stops that with bishop a4, and that bishop isn't really doing much on c2 anyway. And he exchanges off here. Carlson could just go for bishop takes bishop here and go for a quick b5, that's possible. But he goes for knight takes d7. And there's a good reason for that. It's because he wants to plonk that knight on e5. And what a knight. This is a fantastic outcome for black in the opening. If castle's here, then black is set up for a kingside attack here with switching the rook to h6. Queen comes over, bishop here, you can bring the next rook over, and there's knight f3 is just kind of a gift in this, and a very easy sacrifice in this kind of position. It's incredibly dangerous already. And that's why Pragg went for h4. He didn't commit his king yet. Still, the knight came to e5. You can't castle. That pawn can be taken. So b3. That pawn was on prise as well. That's why b3 was played. But knight d3 check. And that is an Octopus knight already on move 14. There we go. Beautiful Octopus knight. Quick slurp of tea while my mug is in my hand. So here we go. And the king is even displaced. Not that he wanted to go to the king side anyway. What a start for Carlson. He needs just a half point to win the match. He's already 2-1 up. This is a dream scenario for him. Knight f4. And this is, I think, a very revealing moment in the game and in the match altogether. Carlson won that third game with extreme determination. He had to play so carefully. But effectively he's won the tournament already. And I think already his guard had gone down. And he's just playing with a free hand, basically. And here, I think if he'd if he just wanted to play very calmly, he had a couple of very decent moves. He could simply exchange here and go bishop d7 and prepare b5, for example. Or if he didn't want to go for b5, he could just sit there. Just time things. Doesn't have to play for that. He could kind of just close things up all over the board, actually, and white can't do much. That's one possibility. Or maybe a more adventurous way is to play knight e5. Keep that knight on a tremendous square. If the king goes to the king side, then later on you might be able to prepare g5 very slowly. You could also play on the queen side with bishop d7 and b5. These pieces are very powerful, beautifully placed, and black doesn't need to rush this one. But as I said, Carlson was clearly playing with a free hand, and his instinct is to play very directly, b5. And with this, he kind of puts the game in crisis mode. He's throwing everything at Pragg now. Obviously, that can't be taken with the knight. The rook can be taken in the corner. First of all, Pragg eliminates that strong knight. Now, you can't play queen takes because of b4, pin and win. So c takes b5 and a6. So this is the point. Carlson just wants to open up the queen side and doesn't care about chucking some pawns in the pot. Why not? Rook d1 played, getting that rook off this line. A takes, knight takes. And, well, again, Carlson just goes for it here. f4. He throws another pawn in to try and potentially open up the f-file, but really it's about giving this bishop some room. Reminds me of a kind of good old Grand Prix attack, actually, or, well, it's typical Dutch as well. They are structurally, of course, related. Pawn takes pawn. And here, Carlson misjudges. He plays bishop g4, which actually loses a tempo. He could just play bishop f5 in this position. And actually, he's starting to open things up and has excellent compensation here for the material. Rook takes, these pieces are all rather loose. The king isn't perfectly placed by any means. But bishop g4, he obviously thought that f3 was a weakening, but actually Pragg needs to play this move. Knight c3, the knight comes back to defend here. And now it's getting a little bit tricky. G4 could come. The king could find a nice safe spot on g3, so that's why h5 was played. But rook e1, you can see that Pragg has found his feet here. Even at the cost of a pawn. Queen takes h4 check, but that's not so important. You can see that Pragg is now reasonably well coordinated. Let me see, what's the score? 6 pawns against 5 pawns. Actually, Pragg is still a pawn up. Knight b5. It's still a really tricky position. But, yeah, that anchors the knight on b5. And, well, given half a chance, one sees this kind of maneuver very often in the Benko, actually. If that knight could just bounce back to a3 to c4, that looks quite nice, actually. Looking at the d6 pawn. Well, it's clear that Carlson needs to destabilize, so he throws the c pawn in the pot, but activates the rook. But there's certainly no breakthrough for black in this position. And here, well, it's hard for either side to do anything. Carlson could just wait here, just shuffle with the king. And like I said, you know, he could do that. It's not really Carlson's style, though. He's very direct. And particularly in this game where he's kind of, playing with a free hand. He wants to do something. Bishop g6. He doesn't wait around. It's not Carlson's style at all, particularly with this kind of frame of mind. The reason for this is to open up the line for the queen. And Carlson had this idea in mind. He could still wait with king g8. There is nothing wrong with this. But he goes for it. Rook a2. Check and d2. I can imagine that Carlson thought this would be enough to completely phase Pragg. That maybe he thought this would just be overload. I mean, this looks absolutely terrifying. The pawn threatens the queen. Pragg brings the queen back. And now queen e5 threatens this one. But Pragg defends incredibly well. I have to say that throughout this match, Pragg really impressive. Carlson put so much pressure on him. You know, in the end game, yes, he cracked in one game, but here this looks terrifying. But he found a good defensive move. That has to be taken. And Pragg has survived. And here it's Carlson that overdoes it. He goes for bishop d3. He could have just played something like this to open up the king, and this should end in a draw. But instead, bishop d3. And I think Carlson had overlooked this move. Simple move, very easy to overlook. If bishop takes pawn, then queen c2 check. Picks up the bishop. And well, let's just dot the i's and cross the t's. If, let's say here, check, here, check, here, it's not perpetual check. The queen comes back. So Carlson had to bring the bishop back, and after queen g5, suddenly the game has turned. It's Pragg that's winning this position. He's already a pawn up, and something more is going to drop. Carlson tries to complicate. Knight d6, another, I mean, really, really strong move, and you know, you have to calculate this when you're short of time, and that is not easy at all, but it's an excellent move from Pragg. He spots tactics so quickly. He's so sharp. Check. Still very scary. Watch out for king takes bishop h3, but Pragg has seen that king g1 is actually an excellent move. Carlson doesn't actually give the bishop. He's got lots of checks. Yeah, remember, queen takes knight, queen takes bishop is going to be a winning queen and pawn endgame. Lots of checks here for Carlson, but Pragg finds a clever way just to avoid trouble. He puts, finally, he's obviously worked it out while he was going around with the king, but king h1 actually gets out of trouble, because if queen a1 check, queen g1 blocks, and, well, because of the knight threatening the bishop, that's going to force a queen trade, which is obviously winning for white. So after king h1, the game went bishop d3, queen e3, good centralization, and that's decentralization, but a very strong move, because if the queen moves again, then queen h2 check. Well spotted from Pragg. You know, not an obvious move at all. Queen c1, and knight f5. That was the final move of the game. Carlson resigned with black. Why did he resign? Queen takes pawn, mate is threatened. If, let's say, the queen defends that, then queen takes bishop. Or if g6, queen check, and queen g7 mate. So with that victory, Pragg tied the 4-game match 2-all. So they went into a tiebreak. I'll show you what happened in the tiebreak on another day. But anyway, for the time being, yeah, we know that Carlson won the tournament, but Pragg managed to, he played incredibly well, great defense, and managed to draw the match 2-all. Yeah, tiebreak to come. I'm sure you know what happened, but I'll be looking at, well, one of those games certainly in another video. Thanks for watching.